All, this is Dr. Mobeen Sayed from drbeen.com. Welcome to the second show for today. And guess who is the first one today? Today, Jenna was first. DDS, you were second. So Jenna was first today, and Ruby's Red is here as well. So let's start our discussions. That's correct. Jenna was first today. Where is Steve? Did Steve become too heartbroken to try to be first? Okay, cool. All right. So tell me, how are things? So there is rubies are red. So can we talk about this new data? It's lovely chaos, single dose administration, and the influence of the timing of the booster dose and immunogenicity and efficacy of CHAD. So Oxford's vaccine. It's lovely chaos. So single dose administration and the influence of the timing of the booster dose on the immunogenicity and efficacy of the. So rubies, is there any article on that? I have talked about that in general once. That ideally, Luffy, what's going on? Come here. What? It's Luffy here. So rubies, can you give me a little more idea? I know that the first dose and the effect of that is still being studied. And we know from Johnson & Johnson that as the more time passes with the first dose, from them at least, then the immunity keeps improving. Yes, Luffy is here. So Ruby says new Lancet publishing. So let me see. So Lancet Oxford vaccine 1 dose. That is, or the booster dose. So I see November 18, December 8. So let me share my screen. Maybe I'm looking in the wrong place. This is a safety and efficacy of the CHAD OX1 and COVID-19 vaccine against SARS-CoV-2, an interim analysis of the 4 randomized controlled trials in Brazil. So that is the interim analysis. Rubies, tell me, give me a link or something that I can search for. Yes, Laura, Luffy and Kyrie both are Bengals. Hey, Steve, how are you? Have you become heartbroken that you're not first? I'm just teasing you. Okay, so let's see. Machiavelli says, OT, can you explain statin mechanism? Yes, so Machiavelli, I had actually done a video about that as well. So if you go to Dr. Bean statin, statins, I believe this is mine. Yes. So if you look at this video, you would see that not only the statins mechanism I have discussed here, the video's title is statins. very, very creative title. So statins, and not only I've talked about the general idea of how statins work, but also how do they work with COVID as well. You're welcome. Shahida, welcome salam. I haven't seen you for some days. I hope you're doing okay. Lotus is Siamese, very nice. Yeah, these are good cats too. Jenna, I'm going tomorrow to have my hair extensions removed. My hair shedding since getting COVID in June. So cried with the massive hair loss. Now I'm praying I'll be okay. Hopefully you'll be okay. Yes, Jenna, we'll pray for you. Trevor says, can you talk about the article I read in the Lancet that said Luffy? Yes, let's see. Let's see. Luffy is super cool. I'm sure that this Luffy is going to come up. One piece. Yeah, Bengal. These Luffy is very vocal. Kyrie does not talk at all. Um, Paul, welcome. Um, John Scott says, Dr. Bean, also hypoxia inducible factor regulates endometrium repair, so may be involved in cessation of menses. Yeah, so I have to do that. I was planning to do that discussion this week, but then we talked about the topic yesterday and then the Sinopharm, so I would pick it up. I have to, so Denise have to also talk about the MCAS. So I have them all written out. I just need one day each to continue with those. GMT Hero says, not a COVID related question. My friend from France suffered a trigeminal neuralgia. Sorry about that. What is it? She said her painkiller prescription doesn't respond to her neuropathic pain condition. So sometimes the trigeminal nerve, which is coming out of the brain and then, supplies various part of the face, it becomes inflamed. And when it becomes inflamed, the pain is really, really severe and usually does not subside with normal painkillers. So you have to give lots of sedatives and those kind of things. It's a very painful situation. Day MacToto says, Doctor, is it possible that the virus in our country mutate into the B117 variant without exposure to foreigner? Yes. So they have seen all of these mutations. For example, the UK mutation or South Africa or Brazilian, they actually saw that some of these mutations have been occurring independent of the other places. Although they look similar in their shape and form or mutations, not 100% similar, but somewhat similar, but still they are happening in separate selection processes. And they saw that the UK mutation and South African mutation were very similar to mutations that happened in Hong Kong and in Denmark. So these are happening independently. Mohammed Zubair says, thank you, Dr. Bean, for your time and effort. One should take it or not. In my opinion, the data that I'm seeing, so let me qualify my statement. I have become spoiled by the data that is provided by companies like Pfizer's and Moderna's and Oxford, that there is at least 90% of the questions that are in a person's head, they are answered, even if we believe them or not. In this case, as you can see, most of the data that I could infer was from the interview of the chairman. I am not used to this kind of data. So now from an efficacy point of view, for example, I felt great that UAE said, hey, you know what, 86% efficacy or something like that, and so we're going to use it. But then I found out that UAE has become a partner in manufacturing the vaccine as well. So now, is it more business-driven decision on their end, or did they really feel that this is a great thing to do? Because of that, I cannot really say with 100% assurance that one should take it. Similarly, when they say there are no serious side effects, that also concerns me. But just looking at it from afar and looking at the vaccines data that is available, here are the things I would say, yes, take it, and here are the reasons. If we believe all this data, the reasons are efficacy 79% to 86%, that is good efficacy. No serious side effects, that is a good thing as well. And Luffy, you want to go to the other room? Excuse me. Okay, so efficacy is good. The severe side effects, I say there are none. Price is very high, but from this data, I would say it is fine to take it. Black and Silver says, are there microbots in the vaccine? So Black and Silver, basically what happened was that the couple of terms used with the vaccine caused a lot of rumors. One of the term was nanoparticle. And that lipid nanoparticle then got morphed into nanobots, and that made people very concerned. So no, these are not nanobots. Nanobots are small chemical substances that can actually do things and act like tiny little robots. We have been able to make nanobots, but not to a point where they can actually go in our body and do a lots of fun things or good things. That is a emerging technology. Hopefully we'll use that as drugs in the future. At this time, we are not at a point to be able to inject nanobots which would do things. So nanoparticle simply means that these are tiny lipid particles, especially Moderna and Pfizer, that are used. So no bots there, no micro particles. The second term that created a lot of confusion was that some of the companies said our vaccine may be sterilizing or neutralizing or binding. So the term sterilizing caused a lots of concern as well, that is it going to sterilize people? The sterilizing vaccine is a vaccine which, when taken, will make a person not even shed the virus after they have received it. There has been no vaccine so far that can be 100% sterilizing. That is, the virus comes in and will not be shed out. People connected this term to becoming sterile, that is, reproductively or fertility is gone, and especially for women. And then there was some rumor that started that somehow the endometrium of women, the uterus's layers, are damaged by this vaccine, and that is how they will become sterile. And that was an incorrect thing, but the term was unfortunate, which caused this rumor. So I hope that that answers your question. John Scott says, good evening. One of two, adenosine has bronchoconstrictor effect and activates mast cells to release histamine to imbalance, may cause MCAS. Absolutely. So mast cell have a, of course, a contribution to allergic reactions. Allergic reactions are all by mast cells. And then mast cells are contributor to asthma as well, because they degranulate and then release histamine and other things. So I'll talk about it. So Judy says, is petechiae without platelet level abnormality a reported side effect of Moderna? No, they have not. But I think that Moderna and Pfizer will have to fess up to the deaths that are occurring with the idiopathic thrombocytopenic purpura and figure that out. But this is not a reported side effect. Steve says, you can tell I'm trained in microscopy. Oh, you are? Awesome. AP says, dear Dr. Bean, can vaccine of any type give positive PCR result? Please, I have asked this several times. No, not yet answered. Thank you, Dr. Bean. So number one, I think I've answered this generally multiple times. I would answer this one more time. So let's look at it. So if I go here to this, my drawing board, and let's do this. Let's follow a vaccine together. Now, let's say this is a person's mouth. So here is the nose. This is the mouth. So here in the pharyngeal area or nasopharyngeal area, in this area, if the virus is present, then we can pick it up, the RNA of the virus, and we can say it is RT-PCR positive, correct? Now think about it. This person, if it is vaccinated, let's say this person does not have the virus, and then we go to his deltoid muscle, his, her, whoever, we go to the deltoid muscle and we inject a bunch of vaccine there. And let's say that the vaccine is Moderna or Pfizer messenger RNA vaccine. If you like to use inactivated virus vaccine or adenovirus, I can use that as well. But let's say the vaccine is injected in here. Now, in theory, if we want the RT-PCR to become positive, then we want this vaccine and the RNA produced somehow to show up in this area, and not only to show up there, but also increase enough in number that it can be picked up by the swab and then counted. So now let's see that can that happen. So here we injected the vaccine. This vaccine immediately from the surrounding tissue. So what are the things that are sitting here? Number one, deltoid's own muscle cells. Number two, lots of fibroblasts. Fibroblasts are cells that are sitting in the interstitial area, and their function is to make fibers. Lots of small, smooth muscle cells with the blood vessels and so on. Then lots of macrophages, lots of dendritic cells, lots of other T cells, and so on. With this, there is also lymphatic drainage from this area to nearby lymph nodes. So let's say this is a lymph node, and that is the lymphatic drainage. Now what happens is, as soon as you inject the vaccine, it is a very tiny amount, number one. And number two, this vaccine, let me take this question off so that we can see the whole diagram. So number one, it is very tiny amount. And number two, it does not replicate. Inactivated virus or adenovirus or messenger RNA based particle, none of them have the capability of increasing the vaccine by replicating it. I believe Oxford's vaccine had this capability, that they had added an enzyme to increase that within our body. But barring that, let's see that what would happen. Let's say here is our dendritic cell. The vaccine particle is presented here. This is the particle, lipid nanoparticle. This lipid nanoparticle can enter this just by going in through the lipid membranes, or it can enter a muscle cell or a fibroblast, whatever cell is nearby, it's going to enter that cell. Once it is inside the cell, the lipid nanoparticle is going to break away and the messenger RNA is going to come out. If it is not a lipid nanoparticle, then it would be an adenovirus. In that case, the virus will be inside the cell. Then the DNA from the virus will go into our nucleus, and then messenger RNA will be formed. If it is inactivated virus, then the virus will be picked up primarily by the immune system cells. They'll say, oh man, what the heck is this thing? These little dead body foreign material, we're going to pick it up and eat it up and see what the heck it is. So eventually all of that material is going to end up in cells. Now inside the cells, this messenger RNA is going to be used by our ribosomes to make spike proteins. In case of inactivated virus, you don't need to make spike proteins. It already is a zombie with the spike proteins hanging from it. If it is an adenovirus, it has a DNA that will be converted into messenger RNA, and that would make the spike proteins. Eventually, those spike proteins are then going to be broken up by endosomes and then presented on the surface of the smaller pieces of the spike protein presented on the surface of the cell in MHC1 or MHC2. Now, please remember that the whole spike protein cannot come out. Why not? Because spike protein has 300 or more epitopes on it. It has about 1200 or more amino acids in it. And our immune system can only work with 5 or 6 amino acids in a row. Because of that, the immune cells and the normal cells know this, that our immune system cannot work with 300 amino acids together. So we chop it up, the antigen, we break it down into smaller pieces. Then we show those smaller pieces. We load them on MHC1 or MHC2. Imagine it is an arm. We load the small piece of the spike protein on that arm and then protrude that arm from the cell. That is what happens. A spike protein itself cannot come out. From that woman, what was her name? Kahil. She said, well, the genetic material will change forever, and now every cell is going to be expressing spike proteins. Imagine if every cell is going to express spike protein. That means every cell becomes the virus. Our immune system would kill us immediately. It would not care who we are. It is just going to kill us. So the spike protein cannot just be expressed. It will be broken up into smaller pieces and smaller pieces are expressed. Those smaller pieces, when these are expressed, would cause the immune system to work. It is possible that in this process, here is the macrophage, some of these, here is the lymph node, some of these dendritic cells and macrophages are going to pick up the antigen and march all the way to the lymph node and present it to the T helper and naive cells over there. Some are going to present it right here in this place. Some cells, for example, neutrophil is a very irresponsible cell. It's a good thing, actually. It is a very irresponsible cell. What it does is it eats up the pathogen, breaks it up into smaller pieces, and regurgitates them, throws them out. What happens with that is those broken pieces are then taken up by the other immune system cells and they further process it. Or these smaller pieces are then, they are going to be flowing in lymph and go all the way to the lymph node. Over there, they are going to help with the affinity maturation. So all of these cells are working together and attacking this vaccine. The poor vaccine has very tiny amount. Now imagine, can this vaccine find somehow its way from here all the way into the cells of the nasopharyngeal area? The only way it can do this are two. There can be multiple ways, but let's see the two main ways. One way is that from deltoid, somehow the vaccine causes an infection here. Then it keeps going through the cell all the way to the pharynx and infects there, and the whole cell layer is infected. Imagine if this whole thing is infected. Number one, how much vaccine quantity we will need. Number two, that vaccine has to be capable of infecting every single cell and traveling to the pharynx. That is one way, so that's not going to happen. The other way is that, let's say for some reason, the spike proteins, not the spike protein, sorry, the messenger RNAs spill out in blood. Then from there, they don't, so again, they are not replicating. This is not a virus. It's a small measured quantity. Imagine that all ends up in the blood. Then from there, that messenger RNA ends up in the pharyngeal area only. Once something is in the blood, it's going to circulate in the whole body. Billions of cells are going to look at that material. And mostly the liver and spleen and the GIT cells are going to pick up the foreign material and destroy them. But somehow, let's say it can reach here. It would then have to, messenger RNA will then have to enter the cell and create the spike protein, enter the cell and sit there to be picked up by a swab. That's impossible. Our tissues have tiny little monsters called RNases. These are the ones that break RNAs. So as soon as you find any free RNA floating around, they're going to attack it, chop it up, and destroy it. So there is no possibility of a vaccine to cause a positive PCR. Now, why not? Because one, quantity is less. Number two, it is not replicating. Now let's think about inactivated virus, the India's vaccine or the Sinopharm vaccine that we talked about. If for some reason all the viruses given here that are inactive, that are supposed to be zombies, that are supposed to have their RNA destroyed or bound, maybe let's say 10 of them were active. Now they can start infecting. Can that infection be controlled here? I think so. Will that actually reach all the way to the throat or pharyngeal area and then multiply that? If it is going to do that, it's going to multiply in the whole body as well, which is not observed. So in theory, you might be erroneously injecting some live viruses with inactivated vaccine, which may have a chance to replicate a lot in our body and actually go to the pharyngeal area and make the PCR positive. Very difficult to do. Because now the whole immune system the immune system is going to chase them and it's going to kill them. So number one, the possibility of active virus in inactive viruses is very difficult. Moderna and Pfizer are not going to be able to replicate the RNAs. The adenoviruses are going to be, their replication deficient. They are just acting as vehicle, just like lipid particle. So I hope this answers this question that can the RT-PCR, one way RT-PCR can be positive. You inject here and then you take a swab from this tissue inside. So you puncture a hole in the deltoid muscle where the vaccine was. You inject the swab there and then you pull the same vaccine's RNA back. Then RT-PCR can be positive, but that's not going to happen. So I hope, AP, that answers your question. So I hope I did not go too much in detail, but I think it's an important question to be answered. Nicholas says, can the adenovirus vaccine platform be used for other vaccines? Yes, it is already used for other vaccines and now being used for this as well. Susan, MMR vaccine made my arm swell up, oozed pus, and itched like crazy. Made me lethargic, fever at age 4 when we got, yeah. So that is an inactivated vaccine, and maybe there was a active vaccine. But again, for it to go from here all the way to the throat is going to need a lot of things to happen. I saw the things are going so fast. So Kathy says, my friend had breast cancer and has Parkinson's and got first Pfizer dose, but is very afraid of getting the second dose due to side effects. Should she skip second dose and wait for Novavax? This is a specific question for the doctor because there are specific comorbidities. If it was me, I will take the second dose. The side effects are there, yes, but these are not so bad generally based on age that I would not take it. So I will take it. If it is me, I will take it. Yes. You are welcome. So Farah says, please, doctor, my mom, she has allergies from white eggs. Should she take the vaccine? This is again a question for the vaccine administration and her. But over here in the US, the general message is that if somebody has severe allergies, they're not supposed to take the vaccine. Or if they're going to be taking the vaccine, if they have allergies, then they have to tell that history, then they have to be ready, and then it has to be very carefully administered. So Gold Country says, don't forget to check out Right Sleep and its protocol. So I think I had taken that note. I just did not get the time to do it. But I'll write it again. I have written it here. Right Sleep. Okay. So Colin says, since we know that from almost a year ago that the virus can be killed with high dose ivermectin, can these dead viruses be used to create traditional vaccine? Yes. And actually, there are easier ways than trying to use ivermectin. We can just have the viruses in a container and have the ultraviolet light on them, and they would be inactivated. Then we can have these binding chemical substances to inactivate them. There are many, many ways to inactivate. The thing is that we have to inactivate this virus in a way that it is intact enough that our immune system can recognize it and train against it. And then when the actual virus comes in, it can train against that as well. So if it is too much broken and too many smaller pieces, it may not invoke the immune system properly. TD, Dr. Bean, I got a trophy. Thank you, TD. JMT says it depends on the complementary virus strain that were designed on the primer and probes inside PCR itself. Most primer probes are not designed with the spike protein, therefore less probability. There's a question from Tubesterini. Do you know why Medscape lists quercetin as a drug that should be closely monitored for possible problematic interaction with ivermectin? What should we be monitoring? Quercetin with ivermectin. So let's see. Medscape. These sites are sometimes interesting. So let's see. Quercetin pharmacokinetics. And let's see what is the enzyme that takes care of quercetin. The concentration of quercetin A glycan and conjugated metabolites were assayed using a population, this. I need to see the liver enzyme, so 1 second. So that is the absorption. So let's look at the dynamics as well. Pharmacodynamics and it may take a little time for me to go figure out what liver enzymes are working on quercetin. Quercetin liver enzymes. It's a flavonoid. I'll have to look at this. The only way they could be contraindicated with each other is that if quercetin is inhibiting the enzyme that is used for, let's say, ivermectin, or ivermectin is inhibiting the enzyme that is used by quercetin, and then maybe resulting in some blood thinning or those kind of things. So I have to, Tube, if you can tweet this to me, I will have to look it up and then discuss it. Donna says that what is the least risk of ADE? So you know that we have discussed this in lots of detail. None of the vaccines have a possibility of creating ADE from SARS-CoV-2. They have even tested it on mice and on chimpanzees, and they could not produce ADE. In theory, ADE can be produced, but from these vaccine trials so far, they have not seen ADE produced so far. And now, as you can see, hundreds of millions of doses are given. ADE is not seen. William says, about the topic you discussed yesterday, fluvoxamine, when I started Googling it, I noticed a lot of mention of fluoxetine also being effective. Do both work the same? Yes. So they both are similar class. They both are, from a mechanism point of view, they both are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, plus they both are sigma-1 agonist as well. However, this study that I mentioned was on fluvoxamine, and so does fluoxetine does the same thing or not? I do not know. And please, I had thought that I'll talk about the side effects as well. Some of the side effects of the psychiatric drugs are extreme mood shifting, which can lead to suicide as well. So just be very, very careful. If you are watching from a country where you can just get these things over the counter, just don't start taking them, because these can lead to suicidal behavior. So TD says that, is there any research on fluvoxamine and tinnitus? I have not looked up those studies, but Dr. Drew said that his tinnitus was improved within 30 minutes of taking fluvoxamine. I think what he said was it stayed that way for 3 hours, so it returned then. So I haven't asked him lately. Today I tweeted about a long hauler and fluvoxamine, and Dr. Drew, then I tagged Dr. Drew as well, that thank you for suggesting this drug. And he responded and he said, I have similar observations too. Maybe I should actually request him to come in and talk with us about fluvoxamine and his experience about tinnitus and other things. Bill M says, thanks, Dr. Bean. DNA vaccines like J&J seem to get better with time. Is this because the trans-infected cells continue to pump out antigens? For how long, and what happens when these cells divide? So very, very good question. In case of the cell division, whatever was happening will be divided as well. So if there is a virus, that would be duplicated too. If there is a DNA piece, that would be duplicated as well. So these vaccines seem to get better with time. That must be because of the continuous testing and working on the cells. So 22 Dolos says, the Medscape page says quercetin will decrease the level or effect of ivermectin by P-glycoprotein efflux transporter. Use caution. Okay, so this is what I was trying to figure out. So quercetin is impacting the MDR1 transporter, which would then either, so why would MDR1, let's see. Ivermectin and MDR1 enzyme or transporter. Okay, so that makes sense. So what's happening is that MDR gene codes for P-glycoprotein compared with the other types. Mice have altered the CNS. Okay, so what it does is that it is responsible for movement of ivermectin across the cells. And if quercetin is going to block it, then that movement will be hindered. Okay, so I'll do some more research, but it makes sense that there is a transporter interaction. Phil Lee says, is the desire to strangle the prescribing doctor listed? So fluvoxamine can, or fluoxetine can cause psychological issues. Yes. So as much as I smiled, but it can cause severe mood imbalance as well. Shahida, if during the date of second dose, somebody has to take chemotherapy, shouldn't the dose be postponed till the patient immunity comes back healthy? Sure. Normally, chemotherapy does not bring them down so much that they cannot take the second dose. I would have taken the second dose first, but sure, if they are the same day we are bombarding the immune system to block it or suppress it, and we are going to give the vaccine to, then taking some delaying the dose may be useful. The problem is that when you immunosuppress someone, they become a little more vulnerable to virus as well. Murgudas says, is affinity maturity of immune system better after natural infections or vaccines? Affinity maturation means a continuous supply of the antigen. So for example, let's say I am a B cell and I live in a lymph node. So let's say this room where I'm sitting is a lymph node and I'm a B cell that sits here. And I am specific for, let's say, SARS-CoV-2 protein. So I'm sitting there, I have my eyes closed and I have my hands open and I am looking for SARS-CoV-2 proteins. Now, affinity maturation is a process in which the antigens continue to flow into the lymph node or being brought into the lymph node. And there are cells that are called follicular dendritic cells. Follicular because they live in the lymph node. So we say they live in follicles of the lymph node. And dendritic cell is because they are antigen presenting cells. So antigen that is flowing into the lymph node, follicular dendritic cell will pick up the antigen, break it up into smaller pieces, and give it to the sleeping B cells and say, yes, you are sleeping, but hold this, test this, improve your binding to this antigen. And so the B cell would just keep learning how to improve their binding. They already know how to bind with it, but now they would become mature. This is called affinity maturation. For this process to occur, there needs to be a continuous supply of antigen. In case of vaccine, you're giving first dose, then you're giving another dose. That is how you're maturing them. But in case of actual virus, you are just bombarding the B cells continuously with the virus, so they would be more mature. So then if your question became a follow-up question, that then does that mean wild type infection is better than vaccine? Yes, but wild type infection has a chance of killing a person as well. Stephen Griffin says, I'm having to go for tonight. See you all next. Very good. See you. Good night. Yes, and this is also very important to taper off from SSRI slowly. Diversity Love says, if my dogs get the COVID, how do I isolate them? They won't even scoot. So I know that there was news that cats and tigers can get COVID. Dogs, I think that there was some news, but mostly it was touching the dog and putting COVID on them and then getting the COVID from there. So most of the time, dogs were supposed to be not getting infected by COVID. Maybe I missed it. Let's see what WHO says. It's always funny to watch WHO. Dog. So with the dog, can I get COVID from my dog? WHO came up, but when I went there, so look at this. When I actually went there, it does not have. So if I go here, so check this out. In the search, it says, can I get COVID from my dog? WHO. So when you go here, there is no. So if I look for dog, there is no mention of that. That's interesting. So a small number of pets worldwide, so this is CDC, including cats and dogs, have been reported to be infected with the virus that causes COVID, mostly after close contact with people. Based on the limited information, the risk of animal spreading to people is considered to be low. So hopefully you don't have to do anything, diversity, if we believe CDC. So Ali G says, is it better to take Wellman tablet every day instead of taking different vitamins separately? Please suggest. Definitely. So Ali G, the only thing that you should be careful is that if there is some specific vitamin that needs to be taken more, for example, vitamin D, then take the normal RDA vitamins from Wellman and then maybe add those. If your levels are correct and you don't need to actually take any extra doses, then yes, you can take Wellman on daily basis. Jen is saying I'm hungry, so we can stop in a few minutes. France says some dogs have died. I would imagine just get ivermectin and dose by weight of dogs as instructed. Yes, that is very good. And Ball says if you're kissing your dog's nose, then it can spread. Cool. Yeah, that is fair. So Carlos says, Dr. Bean, can you please do a video on Cancino? So I thought that today I'll do Cancino and Sinopharm together, but Sinopharm itself took so much time to research and find that I'll do Cancino separately. A friend of mine lives overseas and it's I'll do that. I have the plan to do that. Acoustic Theory says, testing, can you read this? Yes, I can. Paul says, I don't believe CDC at all. Ronald says, I took my second Moderna 13 hours ago. Why I don't have a fever or chills like people? So, Paul, 70% of the people have pain. A smaller number, 40-50% of the people have fever and other things. So that means half of the people actually do not experience it, and that is totally fine. That means just your immune system is not going too crazy about it. And that doesn't mean that immune system is not becoming ready for it. Eric the dog. Kissing or dog bum rub or mouth say you got diarrhea to doctor get ivermectin. Good. Andrea Nord, thank you so much. You're very welcome. Thank you as well. Um, I've been on ACQ 200 once a week since August. Should I continue? So, as long as you're not getting any arrhythmias and as long as you're taking zinc with it, it is fine. Otherwise, if you have access to ivermectin, that bi-weekly could be also useful. So there's a question. Akib says, why bats don't get the disease? Akib, it is just like this, that we have human coronavirus in 86% of the population, but we all don't get sick with it. It just sits in us, and maybe I have it, maybe you have it, and it doesn't do anything to it. Similarly, the SARS-CoV that is sitting in bats is not doing anything to them, but when it comes to humans, because our immune system is not aware of them, it starts replicating and we start reacting. So there are always pathogens that are normal flora of a species, but when they jump to another species, they can cause infection there. So Dr. Bean said, how can bats slow their telomere degradation? I don't know. I'll have to read that up. Cool. Diversity Love says, I'll go back to watch your class on ivermectin and quercetin. I've done a lots of discussions on ivermectin. So just looking for questions. For critical patient, most doctors are giving 32 milligram methylprednisolone. Marek recommends twice that. Which do you think? So I am of the high dose opinion as well. I have seen that low dose injectable steroids are not very useful. And I do not know why doctors stay with low dose. Look, the thing is this, you're giving it still for a short time, because if you didn't do it, patient is going to die. And if you did it correctly, patient will improve and you'll stop these steroids. So high dose steroids should be given. Oh wow, Island Man says that I have stockpiles of hydroxy. No, so Alijin, I talked about Aljin, RIP. I talked about the Sinopharm vaccine, so we did not talk about ivermectin. Nicholas says, if a person received an adenovirus vaccine for COVID, will affect the future effectivity of other adenovirus vaccines on that person? No. No. Every time you'll give the vaccine, it would boost them. At some point, you would not need more vaccines. Cool. So how about we stop for today? We'll continue with our discussion, which is going to be our discussion with the Thank you very much, Diversity Love. So we'll continue with our open forum anyways tomorrow as well. So thank you very much. Please like, subscribe, and share. If you wanted to support this work, there is 2 or 3 links in the description. One is to become my patron, other is to buy me coffees, and the third one is to just support my work. So thank you very much, and I would see you tomorrow.